Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. We're continuing our series of daily morning meditations where we generally look at one or another lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the daily office lectionary. And I thought we'd do something completely different today for Saturday morning, and we would take a look at the lesson that's assigned for morning prayer from the book of Numbers. So we're on chapter 21, verses 4 through 9. This is, of course, remember, this is a story of Moses and the people of Israel. They've already been released from slavery. They've gone through the Red Sea, and they are now journeying towards what eventually will be the Promised Land. Of course, we know it will not be a short trip. And so this particular story, the people of Israel have sinned. They've rebelled against God. And so we'll pick up chapter 21, verse 4. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. And the people spake against God and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loatheth this light bread. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, We've sinned, for we've spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, Take thee a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. And Moses made the serpent of brass and put it on a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when it beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Okay, so I always find this particularly interesting. A couple of interesting points. First of all, here we have the people of Israel who are murmuring against God. And we hear this again and again throughout this time. Oh, would that it be better we were still in Israel. We had plenty of food and leeks and all these other things, and now we're starving to death, right? And so God sends them food, and yet they continue to complain. Of course, we know he'll send them water from the rock. He'll send them manna. They'll have quail, all this sort of stuff. And they keep finding ways to complain and rebel against God because our fallen condition will do that. In this particular case, God is punishing them for their murmuring against him and against Moses, his chosen servant. And so, of course, we have these fiery serpents. Now, a couple of first things. First of all, the idea of a serpent on a pole bringing healing, does that actually ring a bell to anybody? Have you ever seen the emblem for a physician, right, for the American Medical Association, right? It's a pole with a snake wrapped around it. So I wonder if you know your biblical references, some of these things will make sense to you. So that's one point. The other point is that Jesus himself, in predicting his crucifixion, his being lifted up on a pole, as it would be for the healing of the world. What does Jesus say? If I will be lifted up, will draw all men unto myself, right? So again, not quite the direct quote, but there was this idea of it being lifted up. The serpent was lifted up in the wilderness, and this idea of Jesus being lifted up outside the city wall on the cross, which will ultimately be for our healing and for our salvation. So today is Saturday. And being Saturday, we don't have public worship at St. John's unless we have a wedding or a funeral. We don't have either of those. This is the first time in like 4 or 5 weeks that we haven't had a wedding or a funeral on a Saturday here at St. John's Church. But of course, we'll be saying our prayers and preparing for worship tomorrow at St. John's. We'll be celebrating the solemnity of the Feast of Corpus Christi. The feast was Thursday. We also keep it on Sunday. And of course, I do hope that you are planning to be with us to worship. And hey, invite a friend or a family member, a neighbor. Invite somebody you don't like, right? Because who doesn't need to know Jesus? Bring him to church. And God willing, we'll see you then.